So, how do I know what type of learner my child is? How does my child learn? And quite frankly, how the hell do I help my child learn? Especially now. So, with all of those types of questions, if you've been following me, you know that a lot of my topic covers the fact that our children learn from their environment, and we need to start there. Now, today's video, I'm going to discuss with you exactly the different types of learners, how to figure out what type of learner you have, and how to foster that early on so you can help your child foster those skills. Additionally, everything that I'm about to give you is going to be research-based, but I totally make it user-friendly. So let's get started. Welcome back. My name is Alicia Tomowski, and this is my channel, The Parent Brain Ball Game. Because let's be honest, guys, the parent brain, it is just not all that intuitive sometimes. And you have to really ball with your kids, both figuratively and literally, to get that job done. Here, my passion is to provide you with parenting tools, not tips, tricks, or hacks, but parenting tools that have an applied behavior analysis foundation. I'd like to think that I make them user-friendly. Now, I want to set you guys up for success. I like to make these videos relatively short, which means I kind of have to drop the knowledge like as quickly and precisely as possible. So go get yourself a notebook and let's get started. Now, there are several different theories out there on the different types of learning styles. There's anywhere between like 3 to 4 of the basic learners, all the way up to like 7 or 8, which is more of like the combination learners. Now, we don't give a shit about the label, okay? What I want you to focus on is what type of cues your child is taking from the environment. And that's what's going to help you figure out what type of learner your child is and how to foster that. Not only you foster that, but also help them foster that in the future. So what we're going to do in today's video is, first of all, I'm going to define the different types of learners. Step by step, I'm going to define the different types of learner. And then I'm going to say, hey, if this is what you think you have, is this the type of learner that you think you had? Now I'm going to give you kind of like cues. All right, watch out for this. Does your child do X, Y, and Z? Does your child excel naturally in X, Y, and Z? Then yeah, sure, that's the type of learner they are. The next step I'm going to do is now I'm going to say, okay, that's the type of learner you have. Guess what? Now let's discuss how the hell do we foster that type of learner in this environment? What type of environment is that child going to flourish in? Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to watch the video in full. First of all, it's super important that you're able to like kind of see that, like, if maybe you think that you have a visual learner, but maybe you don't. Maybe you have a read-write learner. Maybe you have a kinesthetic learner, physical learner. So you need to kind of look at each one of the learners. Then what I also want you to do is look at how we're going to evaluate what type of learner you have. There's 2 different ways. There is what I just described, kind of like the more natural, like, okay, what type of cues does my child pick up from the environment? And then there's more of an experimental approach, which I will describe later in the video if there's like 2 different ones that you're kind of throwing up in the air. But for now, let's just go through the different types of learning styles they are. So first, let's begin with those auditory learners. And that's exactly what it sounds like. Those are our children who learn through listening so much easier than any other avenue in their environment. Those are our children who accept auditory input so much better. How do we identify that child? That's our child early on that's really good at following directions, okay? 1 step, 2 step, multiple steps. That's our child that when we read a book, they're able to regurgitate some form of new information that they received from it. That's our child that enjoys that dialogue, that when they ask questions, they have a tendency to repeat it, whether that's under their breath or they repeat it just to make sure that they understood it right in their own words, okay? So then how do we foster that as not only younger, but also as our child get older? How do we foster that? Those are your children that are going to learn so much better from lectures. That is your kiddo that when they read something, that is the kiddo that is going to have to repeat it out loud. That is the kiddo that when you give a direction, you want to kind of make it an interverbal. You will, or make a suggestion, or have a follow-up and be like, okay, what did you understand? What did you hear me say from that? Okay, what did you pull from that book that we just read? That's the learner that you want to get to keep talking, okay? That is the learner that they kind of perk up during conversations. That's the learner that has a lot to contribute because, again, it's that auditory input that they need. So now let's move on to our visual learner, and that's exactly what it sounds like. That is the child who is observing and picking up so much more from their physical environment. So how do I identify that? That is my kiddo that is observing body language. That's my kiddo that can see facial expressions. That is the kiddo that is like, Mommy, like what? Are you mad right now? Because what's going on right here, okay? You know, I kind of know where I'm going with that, okay? That is also your kiddo that really enjoys drawing, who has a crazy, vivid imagination. That's your kiddo that enjoys writing. That is a lot of like our doodler. So how exactly do we foster that? Again, that's gonna be the child that when you start teaching them a new concept, I'm gonna encourage you to doodle. I'm gonna encourage you to draw me what it is you're hearing. Those are the kiddos that like diagrams. Those are the kiddos that are really gonna excel with like handouts. The more physical things that you can give your child when you're learning a new concept, the better and the easier that they're gonna be able to pick that up. So let's talk about those kinesthetic and or tactile or physical learners. Again, just what it sounds like. Their child is absorbing and or learning so much more from their environment via that like physical interactment. So how do I identify? Those are our children who have an aptitude in sports, dance, have got some bomb ass balance skills. Those are our kiddos that are involved in drama. That is my kiddo that does huge gestures when they're talking, okay? When they're reenacting a story of what they did today, like their whole body is involved in it, okay? So how do I foster that? All right, so that type of child, you need to involve their entire body in it. You need to do a lot of gestures like what I'm doing right now. You need to gesture a lot to that child to capture that attention. That is your kiddo that's going to be more involved in drama, all right? That is your kiddo that when you're trying to get them to process something auditorily, you want them all, again, to write it down. You want them to draw their own diagram. You want them to draw their own story. How is it that you heard me? What did you say, okay? Those are your kiddos that we involve whiteboards with. Those are your kiddos that we do science experiments with. So that is your child that when they're learning and they're processing something, we involve so much more of their body. We do a lot of movements. We go from one place to the next place. We don't sit still because, again, that is a child that kind of struggles with that. Now, we also have those verbal-linguistic learners. Those are our learners, those are our read-write learners, okay? So how do I identify? That's my learner that doesn't just process things visually or auditorily, okay? That's my learner that kind of is like a combination learner, okay? So for the younger kiddos, how do I identify that? That's my kiddo that really enjoys me reading those books, but then snatches that book from me and then also wants to see it and or really would prefer to sit in my lap or prefers to sit next to me as I read it. That's the kiddo that you should be pointing to each one of those words that you say. So your child can hear you say it and then looks down at the word and is like, oh, that's what she says. Oh, that's what that is. That's the kiddo that when you see a pig, you want to point to the pig, make the noise of the pig, say, oh, look, there's a pig, not just kind of getting that quick joint attention of, oh, look, Mommy sees a pig. Oh, what kind of noise does that pig say? No. Woo, I'm going to keep pointing to that pig. It's that combination learner, okay? That is my child that's going to not be able to excel in just diagrams. That is the kiddo that's going to have to be able to see that diagram and then try to see if they can create the diagram. That's the kiddo that when you read stories to them, you want to use different words, or I'm sorry, not different words, different characters, okay? You're using different words for a damn book, right? You want to use different character voices for each one of the character. Make a high pitch for the girls, make a low pitch. That's, you want to grab their attention. Meanwhile, those are still those kiddos that you're pointing to, right? Okay, same thing for that sentence structure. So again, it's all about combining both of that visual and auditory input for that child. Now, another type of auditory learner is going to be your musical learner, okay? That's the kiddo that really loves sing-along. That's the kiddo that makes up their own song as they go, as they hear a rhythm. That's your kiddo that's really good with rhyming, okay? Now, how do I foster that? Again, kind of like your tactile learner, it's a lot of like engrossing their body into it, okay? Your kiddo is gonna pick up sounds like it is your job, okay? Your kiddo is gonna hear things in their environment and be like, oh, I'm sorry, what? Including conversations, okay? So what we need to do is we need to foster that. So it's gonna be a lot of like, in terms of if your child has to do some sort of memorization, all right, you're gonna put a beat to that shit, okay? If your child is going to be learning something, why don't you create it and make it fun, okay? We're including color in that shit, okay? I am doing a diagram. I am getting my body involved. We're looking at that thing and we're like tapping along, tap that foot along. So it's that child that their body and their mind is physically active, but again, it's a lot of that rhythm, okay? Now, I also have spatial learners, okay? Now, those are my learners and those are my kiddos that they love building, okay? Those are my kiddos that love construction, all right? Those are the learners that like you give them a map, you give space and time and they have it. That is my kiddo that has more of an imagery, okay? That is a step-by-step learner, and that is how you're gonna foster that learner in their environment. You're gonna break that shit down for them step by step. So if you have some sort of rule, you need to look at like the bigger rule, and then we need to slowly break that down for them. So for example, if you are teaching that younger learner their address, you're not gonna teach them the entire thing, okay? My spatial learner is gonna get lost in space with that one, okay? What you're gonna do is you're gonna break it down. Let me give you the numbers of our house first, okay? You learned that, let's pick that up. Oh, great, now you got the numbers. Now let me teach you the street name. Now let's connect them, okay? So it's a lot of like step-by-step learning for those spatial learners. You have to think of it too, they're constructing. How are you constructing? You're constructing one level at a time. And finally, we have the combination learner. Now, I kind of went back and forth as to whether or not I wanted to include this learner in my video to begin with, only because it's so hard to identify this learner, because this child doesn't just learn from diagrams. This child doesn't just learn from like the different character voices. This child, sorry, that was obnoxious, I'm sorry. But this kiddo takes different pieces from each one of those previous learner styles that we discussed and incorporates them in different avenues. I mean, it's so hard to describe this learner, because this child is the one that when they're doing math, suddenly they're a visual learner. This is the child that when they're doing social studies, suddenly they're a spatial learner and they got that shit. So it's the kiddo that can't just focus and doesn't have just one skill. This is the kiddo that excels in a little piece of each one, if that makes sense. Okay, so the last component that I want to talk about is, I kind of touched on it earlier in the video when I said that if you're kind of like teetering on not really knowing which type of learning style your child has based on observations, you're like, and let's say, I don't know, my kid could be an auditory learner and or my kid could be a kinesthetic, which is that tactile learner, and I'm not really sure, I'm not confident which one my kiddo is. So what you're gonna do is, let's do an example for our early learners. Let's go anywhere between 1 to 2 years of age, okay? You're gonna pick 2 different rando inanimate objects that your kiddo really doesn't come into contact with on a day-to-day basis that is a completely novel item to them. So I'm gonna choose a pine cone and a spatula, okay? 2 items because it's 2 different learning styles that I'm going to be testing out. I don't want to use the same item for both learning styles because technically your child could kind of learn it based on the repetition and you're still kind of stuck between, I don't really know how the hell you learned that. No, we don't want to do that. 2 different objects for the 2 different styles. So let's start auditorily, and let's say it is my pine cone, okay? Now, you're not going to do repetition with your child for this. This is gonna be like a one-time introduction for 2 days, okay? So this is not like we are sitting down and we are doing homework. No, it is, oh my gosh, look what I found outside. This is a pine cone. This is an amazing pine cone that I found in a tree. Look at this pine cone. Again, auditory, all about listening to you, okay? And then Now we're done for the day, okay? That was on Monday. Tuesday, another day, I'm gonna say it again. Look at this pine cone. It is a different color than the one yesterday. Look at this pine cone, okay? That's it, now we're done. Day 3, let's say Wednesday. Now I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna say, hey, what is this? What is this, okay? And you're gonna see if your child is able to recall it, all right? Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go on to that spatula, and let's say it's that kinesthetic and that tactile that you're like, maybe he's that. What you're gonna do now is like bust out the spatula and be like, oh my gosh, look at this spatula. And you're gonna give it to your child. You're gonna let your child play with it. You're gonna put it in a bowl. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, because again, physical learner, their entire body is involved in it. So it's a lot of like, oh my God, let's play with it in the kitchen because we are in the kitchen. I use a spatula to cook. Here, why don't you use it too? Type of thing. Again, one and done. Now I'm done. The next day, I do the same thing. I show that spatula again. I label it. I let them feel it, touch it, see it, smell it, just take it in with all their senses, okay? Now the third day, again, no teaching, you're just introducing it and say, what is this? And then you're gonna see which way your child was able to pick up that rando object that you chose. Were they able on day 3 to be able to identify the pine cone without any type of prompting? Or were they on day 3 able to identify that spatula with any form of prompting? That's gonna be your best way to kind of tease out what type of learner, if again, through observation, you can't do. Now let's say you have an older learner, okay? Now let's move on to like maybe our 2 to 4 type of age. Same kind of concept, but you're gonna go like a little bit more difficult of a skill, okay? Let's teach your address, or let's teach your phone number, things like that. Again, you gotta think child's like where your child is developmentally and what type of skill works for them at that age appropriateness and how you're going to challenge them. Whatever it is you want them to learn, it is in fact something that you're going to teach. But again, it's only that one and done introductory. It's not going to be that constant repetition, okay? And with that, it wraps it up for me today, guys. So if you found value in today's video, don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell icon so you can get notified of the future videos that I do, which I do try to do weekly. And don't forget to kind of comment below and let me know if there's maybe any other type of behaviors that you would like me to touch on, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.